I have never played a game more poorly represented than Mass Effect Andromeda. Bringing up the title in any forum is asking for an onslaught of readers who feel it necessary to add in their words of disgust towards BioWare's new space opera. I imagine few of these denigrators have actually played the game to completion. Of course, this is normally the case with all AAA titles, but rarely do I see the type that emboldens people to talk as if they have been practiced in video game animation for 20 years. Simultaneously, I have never played a game as half-baked as Mass Effect Andromeda, a game that was so obviously not ready to be shipped, and yet, here it is. Mass Effect Andromeda is a tennis match, and you are the ball. Back and forth between what makes the series so special and great, and then straight back to some of the most baffling game design and narrative decisions. I am sure that you have seen the game's reviews. They are maybe the worst for BioWare in its history, almost certainly between its major role-playing titles, Dragon Age, Mass Effect, and Knights of the Old Republic. Again, I don't really know if it's fair to judge this game based off the reviews. I saw some that I felt came from a position of experience, and some that came from a bit more agnosticism. There are plenty of videos on the problems with game reviews. I tend to think that numerical ratings are good. Most just want a binary, do I want to spend my time playing this or do I not? While I do value these long essays on games to better inform myself, both are necessary. With Andromeda though, it does seem like a 2-page article and a 1 through 10 score does seem to be a futile effort, for a lot of reasons. Do you remember when the Hobbit movies were coming out? They came with this unbearable CGI, nauseating frame rate, and they were all shot entirely in digital. Audiences were losing their minds. They were not great movies. So I'm going to assume that you saw these movies. I did. I remember going in so skeptical and afraid to see a franchise and world that was so beloved to me possibly be destroyed for a quick buck. I was fully ready to be disappointed. But then something happened in the opening minutes of the first movie. That song Concerning Hobbits came on, you know, like the Lord of the Rings song. No lie, I got goosebumps. I teared up right there in my movie seat. I'm getting goosebumps now actually writing the script listening to the song. It was so exciting to know that I was returning back to that cinematic universe and see so many of the familiar sights and characters, and see new content from it. It was incredible. It seemed like nothing could ruin that movie afterwards. This, of course, is the challenge of analyzing a game like Mass Effect Andromeda for me. How do I properly critique a piece of work when I giggle at the mention of Liara T'Soni? How can the viewer expect me to be objective when I'm telling you that the original Mass Effect trilogy profoundly shaped the way I view science fiction and narrative? I guess, in a way, I don't expect you to think that this would be entirely objective. I do, however, expect you to trust that the goal of this video is not necessarily a review. It's not a book report or a critique. What I hope to accomplish is that someone who watches this video is armed not only with a cursory understanding of the game's positives and its shortcomings, but that they can come away with the ability to make their own judgments about the game. Essentially, I want this to be the video that you send your annoying roommate who won't stop criticizing a game he knows nothing about. I want this to be the video you watch because you don't believe that you can score a game like this on this sort of scope with a 1 to 10 rating scale. Obviously, just playing the game will get you a better understanding of it, but to be honest, I'm not sure I would even recommend doing that. If at any point you feel the desire to play this game on your own, quit watching. This is your official spoiler warning. Ideally, this video will be enough for you to understand Mass Effect Andromeda in terms of its narrative, its gameplay, its thematic elements, and its role in a wider cultural context in terms of video games. I think it only necessary to start this video with the topic of the animations.
Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything.
The topic that most will equate with this title. I'm not going to linger on this topic. You have almost certainly seen the faces of some of the characters whether or not you have played the game. They are not good. They aren't even not good. They're pretty bad. What is interesting to me is just how inconsistent they are. Now, I'm not a game developer, and I'm certainly not an animator. I guess as though that there is a serious pecking order into which cutscenes get worked on and to what degree. Some of the main quest scenes actually look kind of alright. It's the side content and the side NPCs that look so painfully painful. I will say this, in my opinion, it is understandable to a degree that this is enough to avoid the game altogether. I understand that some gamers fix their sights towards games that provide an incredibly realistic visual experience. Personally, I find that the animations become less of an issue the further I progressed into the game. That being said, I do think that one has the right to not like the game for this reason. I would just ask that you consider the idea that a game is made up of many more parts than its characters' visuals, and to not judge the aspects of the game because of this. Furthermore, I feel just as a general rule that visuals are not what dictates immersion. I would have to ask how anyone ever was immersed or enjoyed amazing RPGs and stories that came out on the PS1 or Nintendo systems. But I don't think this is a good characterization or defense of the issue of the animations. I don't think people are angry because it hinders their ability to be immersed. I think it is more of an example, a visual example, of a broader issue with Mass Effect Andromeda and AAA titles in general. This is to say that most people feel, when they see these faces and animations, that they are being denied an experience that they think they deserve for the $60 price tag, the 5-year development cycle, the current generation consoles, a powerful PC, a massive publisher like EA, or an experienced developer like BioWare. I mean, should I keep going? I think it is clear that people feel jaded not because they're incapable of suspending their disbelief and are unable to be immersed in a game that doesn't have photorealistic visuals, but that the animations are symptomatic of a wider problem of this game just not being given the time it needed. Further on that point, the animations are only the tip of the problem. To me, a much bigger problem is the recycling of assets within the game. That is so much more symptomatic of laziness and a rushed product than the animations, which could be attributed as much to incompetence as it could be negligence. Asari and the new race Angara pretty much have the same faces throughout the whole game besides one or two main characters. I am not exaggerating, these races share the exact same face across the entire game, every single person. This was not the case in the original trilogy, and it appears that BioWare had them in as filler while they worked on animations, and never had time to replace them with unique faces. To me, this is far worse than the animations. I don't really feel it necessary to keep talking about this. I do inject subjectivity into these videos, but on this topic in particular, you can easily make your own opinions about it. I'm sure you already have. Let's move on. Game analysis should generally be broken down into sections so one can easily index what works and what doesn't work. If you're new to this channel, you will see I have never done a video like this. I want to try and figure out what works best, so I imagine it would be easiest to break down this analysis into easy to follow parts, so you can come back and watch in sections and not lose your place. Like I said, I want this video to be a comprehensive summary and analysis, not just my opinion and not just a book report. So let's go through the story here. I will interject with issues of game design and opinion. In regards to the story in the game, I think maybe the single biggest problem with Mass Effect Andromeda is that the game has absolutely no respect for your time. Zero. The game will waste your time in every way imaginable, in its gameplay, in its narrative, and its level and quest design. In the game, I completed the main story, achieved 100% planet viability on every single planet. I did every loyalty mission, every collectible, and every quest that wasn't included in the additional tasks section. This took me a total of 70 hours. I'm confident that I could have had the same experience with the same emotional tensions and pacing in less than 50 hours. There's an absolutely absurd amount of filler content here. Doors opening slowly, flying between planets, masked loading screens, huge expanses of absolutely nothing in the open worlds, fetch quests, and annoying NPCs populate the entire game, and they delude from what is otherwise an intriguing concept for the story, at least thematically. Mass Effect Andromeda deals with a lot of the same motifs and themes that the original trilogy did. Unfortunately, no theme is more prevalent than that of unity. This is to say that again, in this game, in an entirely new galaxy, BioWare has essentially created the narrative framework to be human is tasked with an overcoming galactic empire by leading a diverse mixture of sentient species into a war. Let me explain it this way. In this video game, you play as a military-driven character who is forcefully and unexpectedly given the opportunity to not only act as a leader in a very prestigious role, but also captain an entire spaceship filled with some of the most advanced technology in the galaxy. In your new position, you are tasked with the goal of fostering relationships with the many galactic forces so that you are capable of defeating an ominous and unknown galactic threat, an evil and foreboding group of aliens who want nothing more than to destroy everything for their own gain. You must build relationships, help civilizations, and explore the galaxy in this action RPG space opera. Did that sound games journalist enough for you? Sound like the back of the retail box? Which box? Mass Effect 1 or Mass Effect Andromeda? Go back and listen to that. If I read that aloud to a gamer, they would probably think I was talking about the original Mass Effect game. Why then does it apply to Andromeda perfectly as well? Sure, it's general, and this is ignoring the nuance between the two titles, but genuinely, why was BioWare so afraid to take a risk or change the formula for this game? At times it really felt like I wasn't playing a new game. Better yet, I didn't feel like I was playing a new game in terms of the fact that it felt like the gameplay didn't benefit from any of the trial and error of open world games in the past 10 years. See, here's the thing. The game tries to emphasize this idea of new beginnings as a major theme, but to this day I do not recognize a single thing that shows that in action. It is one thing for a developer to write dialogue into a game that is supposed to make a player feel a certain way, and it is another for the synthesis of the gameplay and the story to make you feel that way. Just expressing themes in dialogue is amateur. It's degrading, and it is above all unfun. Mass Effect Andromeda is stuck in Xbox 360 era Ubisoft titles. It repeatedly recycles assets and forces you, the player, to waste your own time. But we'll cover all that after the story. The game starts with you waking up from cryosleep on the human Ark Hyperion. These arcs were sent from the Milky Way around the time of Mass Effect 2 in order to settle the Andromeda Galaxy. You play as either Scott or Sarah Ryder, the son or daughter of the Pathfinder Alec Ryder. For my playthrough, I played as the default Scott Ryder, so I will be using male pronouns in regards to my experiences. I played the game on hardcore difficulty. After waking up, the game lets you roam around the Ark for a bit and learn about your abilities. You ask about your sister, who is also in cryosleep. Her pod malfunctions, and she is injured and indisposed for a good period of the game. Next, you meet the Dr. Lexi, an Asari, and she's one of the most helpful people on your ship. You meet one of your strike team leaders, Cora. Cora is the first squad mate you actually encounter, and in my opinion, she is one of the worst. Cora lacks a lot of the nuance and depth that previous characters have, and it shows me that BioWare tends to not give humans as much interesting quirks or attention as they do some of the alien squad mates. It's understandable, and I understand this is subjective, but I think this pattern can be found throughout the original trilogy too. Just make a quick list of your favorite squad mates in the original trilogy. I can probably assume that Jacob, Kaiden, Ashley, and Miranda have been in the bottom half of that list. I know from surveys done on the Mass Effect Reddit and elsewhere that Liam and Cora are both amongst some of the least favorite in Andromeda as well. This is a bizarre pattern that BioWare has further solidified in this most recent title. But more on Cora later. You are tasked with your first objective in the Andromeda Galaxy: find home for the Milky Way species. Before you can do that though, you find you are held back by something called the Scourge, a massive energy field that moves across space like a mold. Touching it does massive damage to the Ark. There's some confusion as to what to do, and it's here that we can really talk about one of the greatest parts about Mass Effect Andromeda, something they actually got perfectly right. It's the dialogue wheel. Essentially, the wheel is separated into at most 4 quadrants. You can choose to respond professionally, casually, logically, or emotionally. This is such a massive, such a dramatic improvement to the previous Paragon Renegade system that I can't even begin to explain how much of a relief it was for me to first see this. I absolutely hated the fact that certain dialogue options and story moments were locked behind a certain point amount for either Paragon or Renegade. What it did was force the player to commit fully to one or the other, instead of being able to roleplay what they would respond in that situation. A lot of times people criticize these Western RPGs for not containing enough role-playing elements. I get the feeling that a lot of people feel that way because of the game's dependence on a solid voiced protagonist. See Shepard, Geralt of Rivia, or someone like the protagonist in Fallout 4. Andromeda's dialogue wheel, I think, is a great middle ground for the game to still have a defined protagonist that the writers get to create, but still allow for the player to project themselves to a degree onto the character and define him or her. It was so exciting to be able to choose how I thought Scott would react in certain situations. For some squad mates, I was always professional, never showing them a side of me that was vulnerable. For others, I found their humor great, and I would fire back with sarcastic quips of my own. When it came to serious problem solving, I would always respond efficiently. When it came to quests or things I felt unnecessary, I would project that by being a little twerp with my responses. It was great fun knowing I could do that and not feel held down by some arbitrary point system. In Andromeda, there is no point system. There's no locked dialogue options because you didn't pick enough logical options. Instead, the characters react accordingly around the player character. It is such a better option, and it is made even better by how excellent the voice actor is for Scott Ryder. I'll actually take this moment to address what I hear as a criticism of the game, but I saw it as one of its best positives. Again, I can't speak for Sarah Ryder, but Scott is a great protagonist and a great vessel for the player character. Scott Ryder is one of the best characters in the game, actually. Scott Ryder is a better protagonist than Shepard, and I believe that Scott Ryder is actually a good slate to begin a game like this, and he fits the themes of the game well. Many have criticized the writing in this to be as if discount Joss Whedon wrote it for the next Marvel movie spinoff.
It's not a hotel, that's for sure. Nothing around here makes any sense. New galaxy, new ways to die. Just not today.
But few have acknowledged how intentional of a move that was by BioWare, and a good one at that. You're an explorer, a very, very young explorer. It is constantly said to you how it is in your blood to stay active and want to progress in life. You are reckless, you are brave, and you are energetic. It makes sense that Scott's reactions to things is that of an immature person. You're not mature. You, the player, have the ability to shape Ryder and make him more mature, more professional and measured, but he will always have the side of him that just wants to see what happens next. BioWare took the Nathan Drake approach here, and it works well because it works just like Nathan Drake does. Both are explorers. Both are reckless young men. Both have an unmatched spirit for adventure, and both are placed in highly fantastical action tales that involve courageous feats and triumphs. No, Scott would not have worked in the original trilogy because Scott would be facing the end of organic life as he knows it. It is a much darker tale told in a much more serious tone. Shepard was a commander in the military. Scott wasn't even supposed to be Pathfinder. He was a young man thrust into a role he was unfit for, so it makes sense that he's going to crack a few jokes or be unprofessional. Alright, moving on. After progressing through the Scourge, you set out to get boots on the ground of the first Golden World, a term the Andromeda Initiative coined to describe the worlds that they thought could support human life. This world, titled Habitat 7,
That's Habitat 7. New Earth, if we're lucky.
is crowded with storm-like weather and unknown energy. The flight down is incredibly turbulent. You and your squadmate Liam are thrown from the shuttle, and you land aggressively on Habitat 7. You get a chance here to familiarize yourself with the added jump jet and scanner, all which will be talked later in the video in the gameplay section. After reuniting with Liam, you encounter the first sign of the main antagonist race in Andromeda. They're called the Ket. Explaining the Ket isn't very difficult, as they don't really give you a lot to go off for a while. They're pretty creepy looking bad guys who talk in deep, angry voices. I did really like the gameplay aspect of the First Contact here, actually. It's cool. It gives you the choice to either fire on them unsuspectingly or approach them with your hands up. Not knowing whether they would be hostile or not, I actually approached them peacefully. They immediately gunned me down, and I was killed. This was actually really cool because I initially thought, oh, of course they're violent. How else could we have combat in the game? But it actually got me thinking a bit more, which the game gives you plenty of opportunity for in its loading screens, that any other race or person or whatever would probably have reacted in the same way. I mean, I was a heavily armed alien walking towards them. You can't expect, in this context, to not defend yourself if a Ket walked up to you on your planet. You do some scanning, you do some fighting, and you're introduced to the odd architecture of the planet, as well as the general gameplay loop of the game, which I will elaborate on later in the video. Finally, you get a feeling for the open world elements of the game, and how you can approach objectives at your own pace in your own order. After rescuing Cora and your squad mates, you reunite with Papa Ryder, and you decide to approach the main Ket base to investigate. It's here you get one of the cooler narrative/gameplay synergy moments, as it really is revealed to you the sort of synthetic relationship your dad has with his artificial intelligence called Sam. As you approach the Ket base, you can see your father just tearing through the enemies while barking out orders to Sam so that he can change profiles and access different skills. It's really cool to see this older man be somewhat possessed by this AI and actually turn into a super soldier as a result of it. Him flying around in his N7 armor was a very cool moment for me. I think this part deserves a lot of credit for BioWare because it sets a narrative foundation for gameplay elements, such as profiles and skills, but also frames Sam as a vital member of your crew, different than maybe Edie was in the original trilogy.
One piece! Not over yet. I need to get through that.
After entering the Ket base, the launchpad for the story really occurs here. You find evidence of an obviously intelligent life force having settled on Habitat 7, and Sam is able to interact with the terminal. It is not told you whether or not this is Ket technology, but the implication is that it is. Sam successfully interacts and finds that it is linked to terraforming towers scattered throughout the world. The towers actually end up stopping the storms on the planet, but the base reacts to the interaction and blows both riders off the platform. After some struggling and a cutscene, your dad gives you his helmets to save you from the toxic gas, and he dies. While you are being brought back to life, Sam is hardwired into your head in order to help you with the resuscitation. You, the player character, are now linked with one of the most convenient, plot-defying, omnipotent Deus Ex Machina AIs in all of science fiction. This is a pretty good partnership. A couple of cutscenes later and you meet our friendly villain, the Archon, an obviously powerful Ket who is not too happy about the recent human arrival. There's a cool sequence here in which the Archon uses the footage from when Ryder interacts with the terminal, and adorably tries to do the same arm movement in order to also interact. This is actually some great storytelling on BioWare's part and directing, because it tells so much without actually having any dialogue. This obviously leader Ket is interested in the terraforming computer, we know this, but he doesn't seem to know how to access it. Note that the game is explicitly telling you that Sam is necessary to accessing these remnant devices. I'm actually going to gloss over quite a bit that happens next, but only because there are so many warring political factions and figures that this kind of video essay is just not the medium to summarize it all. It'd take hours. Essentially, you arrive on the Nexus and meet the leaders of the Andromeda Initiative. You find out that things have been going less than stellar, and the morale is only slightly higher than the amount of food left. On top of that, the other arcs containing the different races are pretty much MIA. You meet all the different representatives for each of the Milky Way races that went with the initiative, as well as the dreaded, infamous, ever-memed Addison. She informs you that your dad wanted to make you Pathfinder for whatever reason, even though Cora is far more qualified and capable, but you are tasked with exploring 6 more golden worlds and settling them. It's here on the Nexus that you begin to be inundated with such an absurd amount of side content, ranging from scanning things to murder mysteries. The wheels really start to come off here for the side content. None of it feels compelling at all. You uncover some more information on Sam and your father, as well as the fact that Liara T'Soni, an original trilogy favorite, had a lot to do with encouraging Ryder Sr. to embark on the initiative. Again, this is me glossing over a lot of these details. If you feel angry that I'm not doing a good enough job summarizing in enough detail, that might be a sign for you to play the game. You get on the Tempest and meet your slick new Turian squadmate, Vetra Nix. Vetra is an awesome character who's actually one that really takes a while to grow on you as a player, both in the game and for me as a person. So let's talk about something that is key to every Mass Effect experience, the player's ship. In this game it is called the Tempest, a much smaller Normandy. You get to meet your eccentric and salty Solarian pilot Kalo, your intelligent and professional navigator Suvi, and your extremely proficient engineer Gil. These 3 characters are among some of the best in the game, and it is a shame that they are reserved to sort of being NPCs you check on after every major mission. The Tempest in practice isn't great. It's not terrible, but it feels clunky to move around, especially how the game handles the 2 floors. Slow ladders down and slow door openings may be masking loading screens, but they're cumbersome and very annoying. There's a lot of cute little additions though throughout the ship, including a message board with your shipmates that provide some funny moments, as well as a center to research guns and armor, access multiplayer, or work with the Nexus. One major improvement is how the squadmates navigate the Tempest and give the illusion of a much more lived-in environment. Your squadmates aren't always in the exact same place every time, just standing there waiting for you to come flirt with them. They actually move around and interact with each other. Some of the banter is awesome. Enter the galaxy map and you get to see the Helios Cluster, your playground for the rest of Mass Effect Andromeda. Your first destination is the desert world of Eos.
Hell.
Set us down at this nav point.
Landing here, you can imagine my disappointment that there has already been a number of humans that have settled here, with fully functional settlements. Some Pathfinder, huh? Whatever. Eventually you find out that the problem with the planet is that there is heavy radiation that is prohibiting widespread settlement. You notice a lot of the old terraforming towers like you saw in Habitat 7, and you figure that maybe that could be the answer. Unfortunately, where there's smoke, there's Ket, and they're trying to get to the towers too. After investigating one of these sites, you are ambushed by a certain Asari.
Back off, or I will push you down!
Whoa! Easy. You've come this far. Just let it ride. I've been studying this tech for months. I don't know how you activated those glyphs, but you have to let them cycle through their channels.
PB, in my opinion, is awesome. And that is not just my man brain talking. She is smart, independent, confident, and nuanced. People criticize her for being standoffish sometimes, but I don't really understand that. I think it's symptomatic of a desire for every female character in BioWare games to just melt in the player's arms, unable to make decisions for themselves. Damsels in distress. PB just isn't that way. A lot more on that later. You find that if you unlock each of these towers, it will unlock the main tower. Pretty obviously gamey way for the player to uncover the hub, but it is the main theme for each of the planets pretty much. PB refers to the towers and the bots that you fight as being Remnant, a name she comes up with on her own.
Not bad. My first tangle with the Remnant was a lot messier.
The Remnant?
These monoliths, the Observer and Assembler bots, they're all the remnants of something much bigger. But that's too long. Ugh, I hate long. So, the Remnant. Like, my name's better as people.
But, oh, okay, I can't hold it in any longer. How the hell does everyone in the game, from this point on, from this scene on, including people you have never met and have never had any interaction with PB, know to call them Remnant, or call them Observers or Architects? There's absolutely no way this could have spread to bandit camps across the system. PB says it's her novel idea. I wish this didn't bother me as much, because while it seems insignificant, really think about that. How does that actually happen? How does the game not explain that? I really feel that is about the extent of my nitpicking potential. I'm not really a nitpicker. In fact, I'm not even really that much of one to criticize a story all that much. If you watch my other videos, you will see I'm much more concerned with the way gameplay and theme interact. Those two things are far more important to me in regards to video games and storytelling. There are much greater YouTubers that deal with plot design and flaws than me, but this Remnant nonsense was just particularly annoying to me. To be honest, in this video, I simply cannot cover more than the most important aspects of the story from here on out. I've really gone in depth with a lot of the story elements, but you're going to notice that that stops. It's really here that you encounter the gameplay of loop of Mass Effect Andromeda, and you're given a massive open world. There are an assortment of icons scattered across your map. There's a hub area filled with little exclamation points, and you're left to your own devices. If you have ever played an MMO, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I think, if I'm being completely honest, that it is an awful direction for the series. The only reason I kept playing was because of how interested I was at a base level. I was already hooked on the universe of Mass Effect, and this game starts really well actually. I love the Nomad. I love driving around these gorgeous open worlds. It really was exciting and fun for me at first. I hate helping Joe scan 14 medical caches scattered as annoyingly as possible across the desert and return to receive 200 XP and a thank you. But David, quit doing those quests. I did. I actually quit pretty quickly. I shouldn't have to remind myself not to do content in a video game though. After uncovering the Remnant hub, you delve deep into it and go through a cool section. These could be considered the dungeons of Andromeda, and they provide some cool change of pace and gameplay elements. What I think I like about these areas is that you could have been so easy to just make them combat arenas with waves of enemies, but instead you get some cool platforming opportunities and puzzle solving. Nothing that will make you sit and think for hours like The Witness, but it is something. It's also cool that the Remnant vaults really fall in line thematically. I always go back to Indiana Jones for this game. You are this explorer, you visit this vault, uncover its secrets, get what you want, and then The game actually makes you backtrack, but this time much more quickly for fear of being crushed by the imminent reaction behind you. I like this. I don't think the cliche bothers me that much. These areas are really cool and provide a lot in the ways of freshness. At the end of this one, once interacting with the hub, a giant map is put in front of you showing remnant vaults spread throughout the Helios cluster. Some speculation on why and who placed these goes on, and it is generally agreed upon that the priority number 1 is tracking down these remnant sites. While doing this, you meet your Krogan squadmate for the game, Nakmor Drak. Drak is absolutely, without a doubt, my favorite squadmate in the game, and his presence was always felt on pretty much every mission I could go on. I love the guy. He's old, he's bitter, he's pissed off, and he is so worn down and old that most of his body is synthetic or creaking with every step. BioWare really nailed the Krogan in this game. The atmosphere changes quickly, and you are able to settle your first Andromeda Initiative settlement as Pathfinder.
Andromeda Initiative, this is Ryder. Pathfinder. EOS is ready for deployment.
Copy that. Outpost block inbound. And ready as hell. August Bradley, operational head for this block. Mayor now, I suppose.
Resources actually are still very low, so it is your job to decide whether you want the outpost to be science-focused or military-focused. I chose science. To be honest, outside of dialogue, I don't even know if or how this affected anything within the game. Also, you are never asked about it again for the other outposts. I'm not kidding. This is never brought up again. You have the option to go back to the Nexus, brief with your superiors, and then meet your brother or sister who is still unconscious in the cryo bay.
I don't follow.
Well, she's still in a coma. But she also has an implant like yours, and Sam managed to access it. He's made contact.
That's incredible. She's okay.
Vitals are steady, but I'm letting Sam take the lead on this one.
Though in a coma, Sarah's mental processes remain intact.
So, is she okay?
You can ask her yourself. A moment while I establish a link with her implant. Proceed.
After this, you get temporarily stuck in the Scourge and are forced to land on the homeworld of Aya. You get in radio contact with an unknown race, and they force you to land in a language you cannot understand. Once you land, you meet the governor of Aya. How do you know this? Well, she tells you in English, in human English. Okay, I can tell you are warming up your typing fingers in the comments. I understand the mechanics of how Mass Effect explains how everyone speaks English. They use biotic chips to translate words in real time. What I don't understand is why it didn't work on the radio for you or from the guards going in, and why it suddenly works for the governor and Jal. I am confident there's no way this goes unexplained and I just missed it. Well, I really hope that's the case. Let me know if there's an explanation for this in the comments. So yeah, Jal, that name I mentioned, the man that will become your Angaran squadmate. I like the guy. He has emotional depth and he's actually really funny. He's one of those characters in the game that I truly feel like you get to know well as you would a real person. You understand his motives better, his people, him in particular. It's a cool progression of a relationship because he really does start sort of standoffish and stoic. This is what BioWare is good at. You learn on Aya that the Angara are a race that have been all but pushed to the brink by the Ket. They have started a massive resistance in order to fight back, but things are not going quite well. After a quick tour of Aya, you learn that you are the first outsider to see it, ever. So how did they get the English in their... More confusion on how they would have learned the language. Anyway, you meet Ephra, the leader of the resistance. You tell him that you need to access one of the planets in order to access the remnant vault on it. Ephra is skeptical, and justifiably so. Jal goes with you so that he may keep an eye on the alien, which is you. You both set out to learn more about these remnant vaults.
I'll be your envoy through Angaran space.
Thank you for trusting me.
I don't. But I can always kill you in your sleep.
Good to know.
You are tasked with the ability to either go to two different planets, the jungle of Havarl or the ice world of Voeld. I should mention before I went to Aya earlier, I visited the crew message board. On it was a posting from Jal. I had no idea who Jal was or what an Angara was. He certainly wasn't on my ship yet, so there's no way he could have posted on the message board. There's actually a lot of opportunities for the game to sort of break like that. This was the first for me. I went to Havarl first. It was pretty. I shot some Ket, I shot some dinosaurs, I did all the side quests, I went into a remnant vault, I fixed the planet. I left Havarl. After Havarl, I went to the snowy planet of Voeld, home of the Angaran resistance. I actually kind of liked this planet. My girlfriend Allie didn't, but I was a hair away from hating it. It is cruel and unforgiving. It is annoying to traverse. It is sort of the Blight Town of this game for you Soulsborne fans. The Nomad traverses the hills wells, but it can be very difficult. I accompanied the resistance to a Ket base on the other side of the world. This base was rumored to be holding a very important Angaran figure called the Moshai. In order to repair and establish a common relationship with the Angara, this is what you must do for them. Infiltrating the base is comically easy. After doing that though, you encounter your first sense of information about the Ket. You sneak up on a bunch of Ket surrounding a number of Angara. The scene is very cultish, religious if you will. Here, just watch.
Fortunate welcome. Step forward. I am humbled before you. You who are the chosen. Chosen by the Archon. Chosen to be exalted. Chosen to be exalted.
What? Why aren't they resisting?
Looks like some sort of ritual. The Angara seem entranced.
I know the Moshai. She's not down there. But maybe in one of those pods.
It's as good a lead as any.
Yeah, the first big twist. You learn that the Ket are just Angaran genetically modified. Through a process called exaltation, you learn that Angaran, after being put into these pods, become Ket. Obviously, Jal is not a happy camper. You find and rescue the Moshai before she is exalted, and you have to make the decision to either destroy the base or let it survive. I went with destroy. God, the Ket are insufferable, and not in the cool villainy way, the annoying I wish you were different kind of way. You bring back the Moshai and she is happy, and the Angara generally appreciate you more and realize you're not an invading, warring species of alien. You mutually decide it's probably not a great idea to just publicize to everyone that the Ket are just them, but scarier looking. So much like me, you're probably asking yourself, why? Why do the Ket need Angara? How do they do that? Can they turn any species into Ket? Who was, the first, Patient X? The chicken or the egg? Most of this is answered. This is me telling you to be patient. The Ket are an unusual bunch. You continue to do all the crap there is to do on Voeld, and most of it is crap. Some of it's interesting. You go into the vault and fix the planet, and then settle Voeld. Boom, done. So let's take a break here and talk about a bit of the story in broader strokes, because I think that while the main story has potential to be interesting, it is one of the weakest parts of the entire game. If you have ever played a BioWare game before, or an RPG for that matter, you will understand that there is so much more to the game narratively than the main story. I made the conscious decision to not include everything I did in this game, because doing so would make for a 6-hour video at the least. I'm not kidding. I'm genuinely not opposed to making a video that long. I would love to actually, but I will never do it to a game this uninspired. When I'm glossing over this stuff, it is a good litmus test for you, the viewer, because if you're scratching at your monitor, which I imagine few of you are, because of my lack of detail, it might be a sign that this world and story might be something you're interested in. Again, I've never really done this before. Summary and plot are not my fortes. Take all of this into account as we progress, because it doesn't get any less complicated. We head back to the Angaran hub world of Aya, and they're quite pleased that you saved the Moshai. For my playthrough, I had almost 10 hours of cleanup work left to do in the Helios cluster, just at this point of the game alone. This was when I was riding still a bit of a high for the game, as it was a new Mass Effect and I was doing everything, even the most mundane of tasks. I was helping everyone. I was the best Pathfinder there ever was. It wouldn't take long, though, for the wheels of this game to start to wobble off for me. I think that became most clear on this next open world, Kadara. It's interesting because Kadara itself is not a bad planet. It's sort of separated into two different locations. There's the Kadara port, which is another classic hub world filled with vendors, a bar, and tons of quests. So each planet in Andromeda kind of comes with its own sort of mini quests of sorts. This usually tangentially ties back to the main fight. It's because of this that I don't think Andromeda the game suffers too bad from this dreaded, horrid, infamous ludonarrative dissonance. If I had to say that there was a ludonarrative dissonance gauge, I'd say that Mass Effect Andromeda is sort of in the middle, maybe near the yellow, where a game like, say, Fallout 4 would be redlining so hard that the needle would fly off. Most of the time, what you are doing can be justified within a broader scope of the game, because you really do have one goal, and that is to settle Golden Worlds and establish humanity's foothold in the Healy's cluster, both territorially and socially. This includes helping people and help them do things that aren't directly related to the settlement. This doesn't include a lot of the loyalty missions and other general tomfoolery that is possible in the game, but for a video game and an RPG at that, the game does well at this. That being said, Kadara itself is literally its own bubble in the sense that the experiences on the planet seem so far removed from the normal game that it actually creates this cavernous rift in the pacing of the game. You are going to spend a lot of time on Kadara, and a lot of that time is spent doing some really boring stuff. Not boring, though, is Reyes Vidal, Kadara's resident bad boy. His questline is good, and he really sends you on what feels like a goose chase. His power of persuasion is well written too, and the climax of the quest made it so that I really felt like I had been deceived. Credit where credit is due, BioWare. You remember how I said that thing about how the biggest issue with Mass Effect is it has no respect for your time? I think this planet may be the best example of that. Let's just traverse Kadara Port. Combine this with quests that send you every which way and into never-ending caves that force you to backtrack through the whole thing just to get out, make for a really frustrating and unfun game experience that kind of soured the taste of BioWare's new approach to open-world game design. I will take this moment to say that, much like Mass Effect 2, some of the best parts of this game are the loyalty missions. They're not consistently great, but when BioWare allows themselves to take risks and change the formula, they are really exciting and endearing parts of the experience. Essentially, the loyalty missions do a deep dive into each of your squad mates, allowing you to help them do a task that they have been mentioning throughout the game. Missions like Liam's actually do exactly what the game previously had been terrified to do, which is commit to a new and juvenile excitement. It's a full dive into the kids' swimming pool next to Nolan North, Joss Whedon, and all the recent Marvel movies, and I loved it.
You dent your lock or the principal will be pissed.
It isn't a joke! I jumped us here blind. We don't know where anyone is or how anything works. And now we're fighting some asshole who wants everyone chained. It's like hitting Andromeda all over again.
Shield the bed.
Don't make this about the whole initiative. We're here to help, and why am I the one defending your plan?
I don't know.
I will not be ignored anymore.
See? Total asshole.
That's it. Space them.
Callan, we can't.
Ugh, I will not be ignored.
Such an asshole.
Other than that, I will not dive into the loyalty missions that much. This would take forever, and I've already committed to not analyzing each mission, so I won't start here. Know that if you have played the original trilogy, you can expect more of the same in terms of character relationships and the way the missions both act and feel like the characters themselves. Before we near the climax of the game, I'd like to talk about a cool moment that again showed me just how awesome Mass Effect Andromeda could have been had BioWare been more apt to change the formula. Welcome to the planet H047C. This planet is by far the most devoid of content and landmarks of all the planets in the game, but by God is it incredible, visually, thematically, and in terms of gameplay as well. This planet is harsh, it's unforgiving, and it's almost completely empty. When BioWare announced that they were going to an unknown galaxy, they teased and prodded at their fans by promising an almost Wild West experience, where you would be tested not only by the species, but by the space itself. To me, H047C is exactly that kind of opportunity. Gravity here acts differently. There's no native life on the planet. There are giant chasms that act as optical illusions, causing you to easily launch yourself into the crevasses. I had more fun testing the limits of the Nomad on this planet than a lot of the gameplay experiences elsewhere in the game. This planet is awesome. But guess what? After doing some quick fetching here, there's practically no reason to ever return. And there's no more main quests, no expansions, no anything, just sort of there. It's just a playground you can revisit, I guess, if you want to. The last main planet in Andromeda is the planet of Eladin. Eladin is a moistureless and arid landscape that acts as a home to the Krogans and their colony, New Tuchanka. Visually, I think this is one of my favorite planets in the game. I think I'm finding that in terms of open world design, I'm really appreciating how artists use space both in the way that they fill it and the way that they strategically leave it open. Eladin is a good example of open space, as the open desert landscape actually contributes to the theme mentioned earlier. It actually feels like a cruel, ruthless, Wild West type planet. On this planet, you parlay with the local Krogan leaders. Very little happens. I will not kid you when I say I'm getting bored looking through the footage typing this, just remembering the story of this planet. The most frustrating thing was how they hyped up the crashed remnant derelict ship on this planet, and how upon visiting it, you fetch one item and never revisit it. You don't get to go up in it. You don't get an awesome chance to explore a ruined remnant ship. You just sort of go in and go out. You do some more things, you kill some people. And that sentence is actually what I had written in my notes when I was playing this game. I keep notes while I play, so when I write these scripts, I have the thoughts from when I was playing. Around this time, I was really ready to be done. The next mission has you hunting the Archon. Again, the big bad Ket man. You learn that the Ket have gotten a hold of a bunch of the Milky Way species and have started to morph them genetically into Ket. A Ket Krogan actually pops up and creates a bit of a problem. Nakmor Drak is not very happy about this. Oh yeah, and you die. Yeah, the game commits the worst atrocity of villain kind. I will leave you this here, says the villain. I will leave you in this obviously inescapable area where there's no way you will get out of this trap, so that, like, you starve, I guess? Shoot yourself? Something? Anyway, I'm going to leave. Have fun. I hate when villains do this in video games. And of course, you get out by no other way than having Sam temporarily kill you and then revive you. I do not feel it necessary to explain how terrible it is that the game does that and then never explains it or explain why Sam never did that in any of the times I died previously in the game or when your dad died. What you do find out about, though, is that there is a much bigger and more important part of the Helios cluster. If you remember, each of these golden worlds have these vaults that can change the planet's atmosphere and identity. One leveled the radiation of the planet, another stops storms. What you find out about on this quest is that there is a far more powerful vault called Meridian, and it does the same thing but for the entire Helios cluster. It's essentially a god machine, capable of sustaining or destroying life in the cluster. Obviously, if the Ket get a hold of this, they become fully powerful gods over all the citizens of the cluster. Naturally, you deem it necessary to go against the Andromeda initiative here and go find this yourself. The game begins to ramp up here, and the pacing is just obliterated. Your sister, who has been incapacitated most of the game, is stolen and taken to Meridian. You and the combined forces of the initiative and the Angara, as well as everyone who you've helped or met throughout the game, which was honestly pretty cool, assault the planet thing of Meridian. You find out that it is its own remnant city. You land and take an awesome set piece with the Nomad in which you race towards the main vault on Meridian. After a lot of combat sequences, you near the Archon. Captain Dunn, the pilot of the Nexus, crashes into the planet in order to save its inhabitants. She dies in the process. Sarah gives you the clues through Sam to find her, and you encounter her attached to a machine. The Archon says some evil, spooky stuff, and then connects himself to some evil, like, Doc energy machine. Who knows? I don't know. What results is a massively disappointing boss fight, where you encounter the same tired enemies you have been fighting all game. The fight is wave-based, which turns into bullet sponges. It really is no different than many of the smaller fights before, like the Architects. And to add insult to injury, you just hear the Archon say a bunch of evil, stupid stuff in a stupid, evil voice. You defeat the Archon and take control of Meridian. For the strangest reason and maybe the strangest plot point in the whole game, Meridian turns on and just sort of fixes everything in the Helios cluster. Immediately. And to further how weird this plot point is, the people of the Helios cluster are just sort of fine with the alien messing up this thing and controlling it, like the God Machine. The Angara, after having aliens come in and take their technological advantage and use that to drive them into exile and slavery, just sort of let Ryder the human control Meridian. It really is an abuse of that gain of factions trust mechanic of video games. After this, the credits roll, then the epilogue is you getting to make some decisions for a sequel that is unlikely to come, and you get to talk to each character in the game and get some manufactured closure, then you get to talk to your sister. See, here's the thing I haven't really talked about in this video. Throughout the game, you can collect these memory fragments to piece together the messages your dad left behind for you through Sam, your artificial intelligence. A lot of what you learn is the events of the original trilogy, and you learn that Liara has encouraged your dad to speed up the Andromeda initiative and become a Pathfighter because of the Reaper threat and because of what Shepard told her. What you also learn is that your mom has this terminal illness. Your dad actually created Sam in order to combat it because of its ability to interact with the body. After I found all of the memory fragments, you get an extra ending that essentially shows that your mom was taken with you in the Andromeda initiative 600 years ago. When she was cryogenically frozen like you were, the terminal illness was actually halted too. So she's still alive, sort of. Then after this revelation, the game just ends. You don't get to wake her up, you don't get to see anything at all. And that isn't all either. You find the Asari Ark, you find the Turian Ark, both of which were lost. But you never find the Quarian Ark. You don't really know where it is. Furthermore, you never really find out about the Remnant, or what the Scourge is, and who was the mysterious benefactor that started the Andromeda Initiative? Who murdered the initiative's leader, Gian Garson? Well, let me tell you, DLC, that's who did all of that. Downloadable content. And I refuse to talk more about the story. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you, congratulations. Be glad you didn't play 60 hours to learn what I've told you in about 30 minutes. That's pretty much the game. There's a metric crap ton of additional side quests and lines that I didn't mention. I mean a lot of them. Again, this video would be 9 hours long if I went into those. One of the most redeeming parts of this video game is its combat, and even to a lesser degree, its exploration. Let me go ahead and dive into that. The game gives you 5 open worlds to discover. We covered them all in the story section. What I didn't cover, however, is how the jump jet attached to your back gives you a lot of opportunity to traverse the combat arenas in exciting ways. The previous Mass Effect games tended to be stop-and-pop cover shooters, but with the three-dimensionality of this title, there's a lot more opportunity for player expression in terms of how you take on the enemies. The gameplay should speak for me in this regard. One of the most unfortunate things, however, is how vacuous and uninspired the enemy design is in this game. There really are no exciting enemies, except for maybe the architects, and the boss characters are all the same and are normally just absurdly frustrating bullet sponges. If it were not for this floaty combat, this would have made the game almost unplayable for me. Still, I can't help but feel like the main antagonist race of this game is boring. I have already explained that they're boring thematically and narratively, but in the gameplay they are as well. It's been a bit since I've played, but I can remember the Ket enemies being, well, there's a humanoid grunt man with a gun. There's a slightly more health humanoid grunt man with a gun and shields. There's an angry dog and an annoying enemy called the Ascendant, which has this shield node that floats around its body, which I guess at the very least is something of a mechanic. But that's the thing. It's like BioWare said, okay, the Ascendant is good. We have this unique enemy with this mechanic. Let's put one at the end of every single main quest combat arena. When you encounter a Ket boss at the end of a mission, no matter their look or character, they always become an Ascendant enemy upon fighting them. Always. It is so frustrating to see RPGs not take bosses seriously. When I think of an RPG mission, I think back to a series of combat and grinding, usually mixed with platforming or puzzle solving, and it all amounts to a unique boss fight to that dungeon or area. This boss fight should challenge you, and more importantly cause you to approach it differently than a boss from another dungeon or section. There are no bosses in Andromeda. The final boss of the game isn't even unique. I'm not joking, he's just an architect, a previous enemy, in an indoor combat arena. The biggest offenders, I think, are the Remnant enemies. They have this sort of cool mechanic in which they are indifferent to you unless you attack or threaten the remnant site in any way, which I guess makes sense mechanically and thematically. But when you do fight them though, they are the most boring, annoying enemies I've ever fought in a shooter. They're bullet sponges that have little to no threat to you, and they're generally completely stationary. There's no chance for skill, player expression, or mechanical depth to come out. So yeah, the RPG elements of the game are okay, I guess. The thing is, the game only gives you 3 skills at a time. It is pandering to console players to a degree as they have less buttons, and this really frustrated me. And BioWare tried to remedy this by adding the profile system, which we talked about earlier. Ryder can seamlessly switch between player set profiles that come with their own skills and passive bonuses. But doing it actually puts all the skills on a cooldown. It's a lukewarm solution to a problem that could have been fixed by just giving us more skills at a time. It's actually frustrating to me how good this game could have been. I don't know if it is BioWare or EA rushing it or what. It's just kind of sad, you know? It's the most half-baked game I've ever played. And the more I write this essay, the more I realize just how much I really didn't like the game. How much I was holding on to the hope that I could feel as excited and blown away as I did with the first Mass Effect game. This is not a good video game. This is a PS2 game crafted with 2016 graphics engine. It is a boring, uninspired, and rushed game. It's also funny, challenging, and energetic when it wants to be. I'm very particular about my adjectives, and the game needs a million to describe it. I also noticed how sick and tiring the gameplay loop of BioWare games has become, especially in this one. Let me explain. In the game, you arrive at a mission or a planet. You scrub that planet for every ounce of gameplay content and story you can. You fight, explore, gather, and converse with everyone on the planet. After doing this, you return to your ship, or your campground. On the ship, you systemically speak to each squadmate and NPC on your ship, and exhaust them of their dialogue so as to not miss out on any story or romance opportunities. After this, you do a series of planet hopping, turning in old quests, and cleaning up your quest log. Finally, you embark on your next main story objective. Repeat. It's becoming tired and unoriginal, and I do hope BioWare seriously considers thinking critically about this and changing their formula. Everyone tends to hate Ubisoft for having a system that they make every game have. BioWare needs to be held to that same criticism. Unfortunately, I'm at a reasonable loss for words on this game at this point. I would only recommend this game to those that are diehards of the series who feel it necessary to learn more about the universe. Otherwise, please do not spend your time playing this game. It will not respect it. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video all the way through. That really means a lot to me. I know these videos are long, but it really is cool that we have a community that's able to digest these videos and be able to talk about them. I'm still working on the formula a bit. I've never done anything like this. You can watch a couple of my older videos. They're shorter and more refined, I guess. But I really do think it's cool that you guys stuck through this. Please put in the comments what you would like to see more of, what you liked, and what you didn't like. Constructive criticism helps, but I also don't mind really mean criticism either. Anything helps. I just want to get better at making these videos. You can find me working on the next video at my Twitch stream, twitch.tv/DavidOzTV. It would really be cool for you to come say hello and say that you watched the video. Other than that, I really appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Follow me on Twitter. It's in the description below. And otherwise, have a great night.